Good day, Africa. I am Ariel Shokiblat Opeyemi, and welcome to another episode of African Child. I have with me Falodun Daniel, who will be talking to us about the dying voice of African child, a great loss to Africa. So, Falodun Daniel, please tell us about yourself.
Myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am an African child, and by extension, that means I am identified with the African root.
Okay.
Understand? To me, being identified with your roots is a very good thing because that is where you're going to find your boost in life. You know, most people get detached from their foundation, from their sources, and the very source of inspiration to go further in future is actually lost in that process. I am liberal. I am a radical thinker. You understand? There's no time for conservation and stuff. So that is who I am.
Okay, super. The audience, the viewers at home are actually wondering what you mean by a topic. So please shed more light.
You are an African. I am an African. Sorry for stating the obvious, but I'm sure you are well aware of the situation we found ourselves in Africa. Yeah, but let me explain what I mean by the dying voice of the African child. Yeah, the African child. Now, when I say the dying voice, that's a metaphorical extension, a metaphorical representation of the dying spirit of the African child. Understand? When I say the dying spirit, the totality of the makeup of the African child is actually lost. It's actually diminishing by the day. Now, an average African is identified with criminalities. Understand? The social malady governing our environment has come on us directly. As an African child, you compare yourself with an average European child and you feel inferior, like you're not good enough. Now, there is one trend in Africa right now. We call it Yahoo Yahoo. Understand? The 419, the scam. Now, see, hardly would you see an European engaging in such acts. Now, that is because their standard of living is nice, at least relatively nice. And relatively, in that context, is just to make it mild. It's far better than ours.
No.
You know? Do you think so?
Maybe.
Yeah. When you check the countries, the poorest countries in the world, the African countries, when you check the countries with the lowest GDPs, that's gross domestic products in the world, yeah, you meet African countries there. Understand? Then the sub-Saharan, yeah, especially Nigeria, the highest rate of unemployment is found in Nigeria. Then the sub-Saharan Africa, where Nigeria belongs, is in fact battled with poverty. You understand? We live in abject poverty. We live in squalor. Understand? The climax of impunity is in our system. Well, now let me make something clear to you. When I say the dying spirit or the dying voice of the African child, I mean they're no longer productive. Understand? In one kind of sense, okay, when you see an average African engaging in scam, cybercrime, understand? The part of the resourcefulness which they are meant to bring into the economy, into the country, into the continent at large is actually lost in that process. Understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is what I mean.
So what actually prompted you to come up with this topic, and how were you able to gather your information about this topic?
Let me start with the first question. What prompted me to bring up this topic? I am an African child, as I've said earlier, and every day I wake up to see the people of Africa languishing in despair, crying, wailing. Understand? This is not even figuratively, literally. They're crying every day. They live in the worst situation you can find an human, or a human, yeah, a human. That is why I just felt the voices of African children are actually dying. Understand? It's going down. Nobody recognizes the African child. Everyone wants to identify himself with a foreign root. Understand?
Why do you think that is? Why do you think everybody wants to identify themselves with the foreign root?
Yeah, as I said earlier, you understand, the people of Africa, sometimes they feel inferior.
So,
Now, let me tell you something. I am a student of government. Yeah,
I see.
I studied the colonial rule, you understand? So, when it comes to colonization or colonialism, as the case may be, the people, yeah, the Westerners, they actually saw that Africa is better in terms of skilled manpower and some form of resources than they are. So that is why they came to Africa to rape us. Yeah, rape us economically, socially, of our resources.
Okay.
They came to Nigeria to take our resources. They came to Africa to take our resources to their base.
Okay.
And they made it look as if, oh, you people of Africa, you're barbaric, you're crude, you're primitive, you're not good enough.
You're
so that is why an average African feels that he is not good enough.
It's not good. Okay, so that, what do you think an African can how do you think he can actually overcome the feeling of inferiority?
Yeah, that's a very nice question. Now, they have to lose that spirit of comparison. You understand? They actually compare themselves to the Western world. And there's something we call social pressure. Now, an average African goes to the social media, sees many things, and actually feels, this is the right way to live. They feel that is the standard to which their lives should be.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's just part of what I know he has for us. He is filled up with whatever he has for us with this topic, the dying voice of African child,
yeah.
lost to Africa. Yeah, I remain Irish. We'll go for a short break. We'll be right back.
Every day I wake up to see the people of Africa languishing in despair, crying, wailing.
As an African girl child, education is our right and we should fight for it.
Our parents should stop releasing us to strangers and they should not be after money. Government should give people chance, that is, they should give them freedom of speech because it's part of our right as individuals.
I'm trying to be what I want, but at the same time, get to higher heights and pass my role model.
Every child has a right as a citizen of a particular country under Africa.
Don't wait for the government or everybody to fight for you before you start fighting. If you start fighting, others will fight you.
You are the African child, you own your life, and every single thing you do in your country would affect the national development of the country.
African child, African child, African child, African child.
I see the African child as a plain canvas, and the parents and the elderly one as the brush. And as we begin to paint the future of the child begins to assume that kind of picture we have at the back of our minds. And very importantly, when he's made to be part of the plan, then the African child now, fits into the narratives that the parents are trying to build for him. It's part and parcel of the development of the future. He is bold, confident, daring. He wants to take on the world, and nothing can prevent him from doing that.
African child, African child, African child, African child.
Welcome back. It is still African Child, and I am Ariel Shokiblat Otbemi, and I have followed Daniel. His topic still remains the dying voice of African child, a great loss to Africa. So I think I'd like him to continue from where he started. Like, I asked him what an African child can do to actually get the feeling of inferiority away.
Yeah, as I was saying, see, an African child should have what we call vision. Understand? Now, Ellen Keller, the first blind woman to attain so much level of educational qualification, was once asked, she was asked this question: what is worse than a man being born blind? Do you know what she said? She said, what is worse than a man being born blind is having eyesight without vision. Now, it is not about going to school that makes you successful. It's about the vision you've created, the ambition. Understand? When you don't have vision, you won't have a mission. Definitely, there will be no ambition.
Yeah.
And your profession and occupation will be in a mess. Understand? That is what we are talking about. So when an African child, an average African child, has a vision of where he is going to, he will be able to overcome certain environmental and governmental influences, social influences, economic influences. See, Walt Disney was once asked, there's recession, what are you going to do? He said, I heard there's a recession, but I've decided not to participate in it. Understand? The system is bad.
Yes.
Yeah. And we, as African children, are integral part of the system. So we found ourselves there, but having foresight is what can make you excel in the midst of storm. And now let me tell you something. It might interest so many people to hear that education is one of the factors that makes the African child's voice to die.
How?
Okay, that's a very nice question. How? Let me explain to you. Now, if you take a look at the people we idolize in schools today, the people we read about, Shakespeare, Aristotle, Shella Percy, Mark Twain, George Bush, the people we celebrate, they never had formal education. Now, there's a poem which William Blake wrote, The Schoolboy. He said, the school is a confinement, you understand, that doesn't allow the child to express himself fully. Now, in Africa, we tend to depend on academic work, you understand, academics, 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 whereby the core principles which a child should possess is lacking.
Which is?
Now, Harvard noted that the leading cause of death from ages 10 to 24 is suicide. So why can't we be taught to manage depression, safety, and so many other things in Africa?
Okay. Thank you, Faladu Daniel. Okay, he has answered the question which says, why does he think the voice of the African child is dying? And we'll be going for a short break right now. We'll be right back.
Every day I wake up to see the people of Africa languishing in despair, crying, wailing.
As an African girl child, education is our right and we should fight for it.
Our parents should stop releasing us to strangers, and they should not be after money. Government should give people chance, that is, they should give them freedom of speech, because it's part of our right as individuals.
I'm trying to be what I want, but at the same time, get to higher heights and pass my role model.
Every child has a right as a citizen of a particular country under Africa.
Don't wait for the government or everybody to fight for you before you start fighting. If you start fighting, others will fight you.
You are the African child, you own your life, and every single thing you do in your country would affect the national development of the country.
African child, African child, African child, African child.
A child in his innocence wants to change the world. When we provide him the level playing field, the opportunity to do that, he can become anything that he set his out to do. Ours is to encourage him along the line and say, boy, you can do it. And that encouragement will go a long way. And we can encourage him through governmental policies. We can encourage him through leadership example set by the political, social, economic leaders. We'll encourage him by allowing him to have heroes and heroines that he could identify with. Not the ones who are exchanging husbands like they change gears, or the novel-rich 26, 28, 30-year-old, you know, who are fathering children all over the place. You know, they can have authentic heroes and heroines who are impacting the world.
African children, African child, African children, African child.
Welcome back. It is still African Child, and I am still a real Shoki Black me, and I still have with me Faladu Daniel. The topic remains the dying voice of African child, a great loss to Africa. So, Faladu Daniel, what are the factors you think are contributing? To the dying voice of the African child?
Thank you very much. I would like to start with child abuse.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a common phenomenon. You understand? When you get here, you hear violence to the child. You hear different things, neglect. Now, I want to make something known now. We call something the street child phenomenon. Understand? Whereby you give birth to a child and you send that child to the outside world to fraternize with the social maladies. Understand? When an average African child is born, when he is not needed by the parents, like when the parents are not expecting to have that child, or because of poverty, you understand, they'll send that child out to fend for himself or herself. Understand? The child, sooner or later, would take up the life of crime. Understand? And this, in return, comes back to the society. Now, in Nigeria, we have political louts used by politicians for nefarious activities. Imagine someone that is known as a renowned tout is used as a machinery for electoral processes. You understand? That is what we are saying. It is a cycle, a vicious cycle of poverty, crime, bribery, corruption, and what have you. That is what is inherent in Africa. We also have the rural-urban migration. Now, an average African child will stand up from a rural area and say he or she is looking for a greener pasture. You understand? Thereby leading to influx of individuals, of children in the cities. When they get there, contrary to their expectations, you'll find another thing. Like, they'll discover that the peaceful life in which they lived in the cities is very different. They'll try to adapt, you understand, to the city life, but they might be lost in the process. Before you know, they're engaged in several things. Poverty is a very, very big factor, as I would say. Poverty, illiteracy, ignorance, and what have you. So many.
Okay, can I ask a question? Is negligence, like negligence on the part of the parent, also part of it?
Yeah, and you can link that to ignorance. You know, lack of knowledge in one way, and negligence when you don't take something serious, or when you actually neglect the child. So.
Okay. Are there any other like external factors except the ones around, like except the ones in the surrounding of the African child? External factors that can contribute to this dying voice of the African child?
Yeah, as I've said earlier, we are in Africa. We have the Europeans.
Okay.
And there are so many other races, tribes outside Africa. Now, I told you earlier that an average African child tends to look there, and that side projects to them a better life, which is not actually a better life. Understand? We are all, if you look at the international level, every country is an international actor, and we are all equal. But many people don't understand that. They compare, and at the end of the day, they'll miss it. They'll miss the road. They'll feel they are not good enough. They'll try to imitate the Westerners. I told you about colonialism, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the Westerners, when they came, they saw we were good. That is what they saw. That is why they would feel, now we've taken what these people have, and we can criticize them. Understand? You hear them saying the Africans are corrupt. But should I tell you something? During the British rule, it was the British, like the British indirect rule of colonialism. It was the British that made bribery and corruption an inherent part of our culture. Yes, because they bribed the traditional chiefs to extort more from the people and bring it to them. You understand? That is where all these foreign values came in, and we still tend to look there and feel this is the way, this is the great part of life.
Thank you very much, Father Daniel. Okay, so what advice do you have for people out there?
The advice I have for people outside, the African children, in fact, the government, the adults, and everyone who makes up the African society at large, I would like to tell you that your root is not something to be ashamed of. You can be identified with your root if you have proper focus and you have a proper foresight and you know what you are doing. You would come up. In fact, most of these Americans you see today, most of them have African roots, African descent. That is just it.
Thank you very much. We've heard it all from Valadu Daniel, and I hope we meet later in the future. I remain Emil Shokiblat Otbeyemi, and he is Valadu Daniel. The topic is the dying voice of African child, a great loss to Africa. Till I come your way next time. Bye.
African children, African